This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson. Yes, hello. This is your host, Harry Wilkinson, and welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. This is the show where we take a look at the days and weeks, events, happenings in the world of politics, news, technology, the media, everything that affects our lives, everything that we interact with on a daily or weekly basis. Stories that may push our buttons, stories that may feel overwhelming or get us down, stories that might get us a little too excited. And we take a step back and we look at them from a higher perspective. And from that higher perspective, we see or we know and we acknowledge that what is going on, really going on, is that we are creating and influencing all of it, every bit of it. And we are experiencing and recognizing and remembering our true power. Remembering that we are creating it all, and that our very presence within a situation makes the difference, creates what's going on. Now, I've talked about this, on almost every episode of this show, in more of an abstract way. In other words, talking about the fact that we are creating it all on a higher level, not our mundane everyday level. Talking about. But, I want to kind of mitigate that a bit and talk about it in a way I haven't approached it before on this show. The fact that, and it is a fact, that we actually, even in our so-called mundane or small selves, are creating it, are influencing it. Creating what's going on, again, on a level that we're not entirely conscious or in control of, but our presence within a situation does change that situation, does influence, does create that situation. Let me come to understand. And interestingly enough, in our next program is going to focus a lot more on this. The breakthroughs in science have been so dramatic in recent years that there's basically a new paradigm that's just there, but scientists don't know how to deal with it. But we'll talk about that later. What quantum physics has shown us now and verified for us is that, in scientific terms, when you observe something, it's now known that the observer influences what's being observed. Now, before this, the scientific paradigm was that, you observed something, it was very objective. It didn't change because you were observing it. It was what it was. But what we know from quantum physics is that there is interaction between wave particles, and these wave particles make up all of us. We're all part of it. And part of that theory is that something exists only when you put your attention to it. In other words, until attention is given to them, and they have what is known as the wave collapses. And when the wave collapses, it collapses into particles and becomes whatever is being observed. So as we grow, and as this paradigm becomes more of our everyday experience, we can and we will and we how and where to use our attention to influence the world, influence the so-called material world in ways that would seem very perhaps spooky to some now. In other words, you can create whatever you want to create. You can know wave particles and change them just by your influencing them. It's very true. Science says it so. But as I've said, scientists don't know what to do with this because it changes everything that they've. And I won't say I hate to be across the board on all scientists because not all scientists are like this. But the fact is that there's an acceptable level of change that traditional mainstream science will accept, and then there is that which cannot be looked at, must not be spoken of, much like Voldemort in the Harry Potter series. There are certain things that must not be spoken of, and part of that is the amazing ability that humans have, the super ability that humans have. We talked about this last week when we talked about apotheosis, the accessing of godlike powers by humans, and the apotheosis, particularly of George Washington, which we talked about in relation to, the 4th of July and the founding of this country. And I'm back talking about it again today because I got such a, strong response from it. People interested to know more about this. People being a little put out by it, but mostly just a lot of curiosity and it resonated with a lot of people. A lot of people understood that as the truth of something. And when you resonate with something like that, even though you don't quite understand why, it means that there's need for more of that with you and talk more about that with you. This concept of apotheosis, which has been around since the ancient Greek days, it's a Greek word, and that's where it originated. So I do want to talk about that. I also want to talk about something that I mentioned last week, and I feel like at this point, I feel like I should talk about this a little bit at the beginning of each show every week, because it is, it's such a, it's so present in our lives right now. It's so on our minds right now. This idea of in this country, our polarization. And it's not just in this country either. We're seeing changes in government, in traditional government, throughout Western Europe. We're seeing people in a variety of countries around the world kind of pulling back, kind of squaring off. There's reaffirmation, in a way, of the illusion of separateness. And that's what seems to me to be really going on. And I talked about this a little last week. I think it bears more discussion because it's part of our national and international conversation right now. But just here in this country, we have this, or we have created this illusion, or we reaffirmed separateness. And we've done it in a variety of ways. We've done it through othering, through trying to, for instance, ban Muslims from coming to the country. That they are in their world, and we need to protect ourselves from them. It's showing in liberal versus conservative right now. People who very strongly identify with one or the other, and not only identify with one or the other, but tend to demonize in very broad strokes that which is not them. And this is playing out in a variety of ways. It'll take too long for me to go into a bit of it, which is why I think I should talk a little bit about it each week, because there's always going to be a different aspect of it. Right now there seems to be a lot of focus on the healthcare issue, trying to change the healthcare bill. And how that is playing out as sort of a polarization game. But the thing is, what's standing in the way is the very thing that seems to be galvanizing people towards it. This push to repeal the so-called Obamacare. And this is a push that's come from, or at least Republican representatives believe that this is a promise they've made to the people who voted for them. And this push to repeal Obamacare seems to come out of just almost I won't say a knee-jerk reaction, but again, it's the idea that you stack up these beliefs that you have, what you're supposed to stand for. And the concept of Obamacare. If you are someone who, well, first of all, if you're someone who just doesn't like Obama, you're not going to be real interested or have any kind of thought about Obamacare. That's just, the name itself is going to, knock you out of the ballpark there. But when it's broken down into the things that this particular piece of legislation that has been rather spuriously stamped Obamacare, when it's broken down into what it actually does, the same people who have spoken out or pushed against it are for it. The changes they want to make to Obamacare, for some, and then there are some that are very